Well, Brian Tyler Cohen is here today, and he has a new book out tomorrow, the day after How to Wield Power in the Post Trump World. Brian, always good to talk to you.
David, great talking to you, man.
What I love about this book is I've been focused more and more on the left needs a direct path to getting power and then wielding it effectively. And in fact, I did a commentary earlier in today's show arguing that a lot of the conversations and the way that the left has operated might be emotionally salient and it might perform well on social media, et cetera. But actually, it's not particularly useful in the interest of getting power back and then using that power to do things, get policies in place, and make things better for people. The structure of the book is very interesting because you go through, well, I'll let you explain it, but talk to us about how you came to say, hey, the getting and wielding of power is really an area that the left needs to focus on here.
So I think the thing that's frustrated me, and I'm sure you, and I'm sure everybody who's watching and listening right now, is that we have watched for so long as Republicans have abused the power that they had, while Democrats effectively fail to wield it. And so there is this massive asymmetry there, and we have seen that present itself in a myriad of different ways. I think the most salient being the fact that Republicans redrew the rules for how to sit a Supreme Court justice. Obviously,
Right.
Merrick Garland wasn't allowed to have his hearing for almost a year. Meanwhile, Amy Coney Barrett was allowed to be sat 5 minutes after voting already began. So we have seen this massive asymmetry. And so what I try to do with the book is lay out a blueprint for Democrats to actually wield power once they have it, because frankly, it's not good enough to just get caught trying or to notch symbolic victories or messaging wins. We actually have to push for meaningful, lasting change. And Trump has shown us through how he's barreled through everything. I mean, he doesn't listen to the Constitution or laws or attorneys or judges or any other branch of government. He does whatever he wants, but he does it for self-enrichment. And so my contention here is that given the fact that our institutions are not as sacrosanct as we were once led to believe, we can also barrel through these things, but we have to do it in a virtuous way. We have to do it so that we can actually deliver on climate change, on healthcare, on voting rights, on a just economy, and so much more.
One of the things I find really interesting in the book, and hopefully I'm not reading my politics into it, is that one of the debates that's happening on the left is, hey, there's this kind of like center left, and then there's the, use whatever phrase you want, activist left, revolutionary left, DSA left, and basically it's a battle to try to figure out which of those two. My view is, I think actually the path forward is the path of Northern Europe and its social democracy. It's not that timid centrist stuff, and it's not the DSA revolutionary left either. What I think is interesting about the book is, while I don't think you say it explicitly, the policies and the ideas that you kind of point to do seem to kind of be pointing in the direction I'm talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, look, I think that it's not necessarily about ideology, although I do advocate for some positions like Medicare for all, for example. I think it's crazy that we are living in the richest country in the world and that we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have universal health care.
Yep.
A lot of it is more about making sure that we can actually accomplish some of the tasks that we set out to accomplish. Like we for so long see us getting to the 5-yard line and then something happens where we don't get there. Kirsten Sinema gives a thumbs down, for the minimum wage vote, for example. So a lot of it is just actually recognizing that when our elected officials are in office, they are not in office to defend the institutions. They're in office to deliver on outcomes. And somewhere along the line, I don't know, I don't know whether it's like DC brain rot has set in, where these people feel like they're there to make sure that they can prop up these norms and traditions, and they forget about the people who sent them there and why they sent them there. Now, you can also make the argument that the same thing is happening on the right, that there is obviously no instance or evidence that the right is delivering for their constituents, but the reason being is not norms and traditions. The reason being is that they had no intention of actually delivering. I mean, Trump had offered up kind of a smorgasbord of promises to his supporters, from lowering costs and releasing the Epstein files and preventing foreign wars, and now we're in a situation where costs are higher, the Epstein files are still suppressed, and we're engaged in a brand new war in the Middle East for 4 months. They never had any intention of delivering on those things. That's the difference. Democrats, while they may be well-intentioned, will let any speed bump block them, and that's what I'm trying to argue against.
One of the things that I think is interesting to think about is that a lot of the discussion today is about what to do on the assumption that MAGA controls the Republican Party. But we may have a situation in 2029 where it is not MAGA that is in control of the Republican Party. Now, this is regardless of who wins in 2028. The candidate in 28 may or may not be a MAGA type. J.D. Vance's chances aren't looking particularly good, although maybe he is still sort of the default until someone comes in and takes that place, maybe Marco Rubio or who knows. How important do you think it is for the left to have a plan that would be effective regardless of whether the opposition is MAGA? Because it might end up being something different.
Totally. I mean, look, that is the North Star of this book. That's why I'm trying to have this debate now. If we're lucky enough to get power, if we're lucky enough to have the House, the Senate, and the White House, that's already a Herculean feat unto itself.
Yep.
We see how infrequent we have those opportunities. More often it's, even if we're lucky enough to win the White House, then we have one or no chambers of Congress, and then you really can't get anything done. And so if we're able to actually secure majorities across the government, I would rather use that time to hit the ground running and start getting stuff done, which is why I want to have this debate now, because so often we see Democrats take power and they say, okay, we've got power, time to impanel a commission, and that commission will come back in 18 months and deliver their recommendation, and then we're going to sit and think, have a good think on that recommendation for the next 6 months, and there you have it. I mean, that's 2 years down, and we could see the House change control from Democrat to Republican. And so I'd rather have this debate now and introduce into the zeitgeist the idea that Democrats need to fight, need to make sure that we're not more deferential to institutions than outcomes, so that when we get into power, we can start delivering on this stuff. We can figure out what it is we need to do and use what precious little time we have to actually get stuff done, so that also we can send a message to voters that when they give us their votes, when people vote for Democrats, it's actually worth it. Because I think for so long, there has been this sense of disillusionment among the electorate, and we're seeing it, we obviously saw it for Democrats in 2024. That's why so many people realigned to the right. And now we're seeing that same disillusionment on the right, where people are saying, like, look, I voted for a Republican. For a lot of people, it was their first time, thinking that Trump was going to deliver. And here we are in a situation where everything he promised, he's doing the opposite of. So if we can't show people that there is a reason for them to have offered up their votes to a certain political party, then we can't be surprised when those people just give up on politics altogether.
There's all of these ideas that require having power that include, what about eliminating the filibuster? What about adding Supreme Court justices to the Supreme Court? Voting rights protections, anti-gerrymandering measures, a lot of really important stuff. If Democrats take the House in November and nothing else, those big ideas are going to have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
What can and should Democrats do if what happens is they take the House back in November and now it's 2 years of Trump in the Oval Office, Republicans still control the Senate, but Democrats take the House back? What do?
You have to use what little power you have, at least to begin investigating a lot of the corruption that we're seeing right now. I spend time in the book talking about accountability, and I think this was a part that it was a little bit difficult for me, because I was like, okay, do we focus on a proactive agenda? Because there are a lot of people who don't care about, the minutia of politics or holding somebody to account. What they care about is that the government is delivering for them. What they care about is that they can afford their rent and to put food on the table and to get medicine or health care for their family. Like, that's what they care about. They don't give a shit when they turn on, CNN and watch the back and forth of the usual partisan food fight.
Yep.
At the same time, there are a lot of people who recognize, I think rightfully, that if we don't have accountability for the corruption that we're seeing right now, then you can't have a functional government. And so you can't trust that, for example, this won't happen again if you fail to hold people accountable for their criminality. You can make the argument, and I do, that the reason that we're seeing so much corruption in Trump 2.0 is because the Biden administration, Merrick Garland, refused to actually wield the levers of power in a virtuous way against Donald Trump when he was engaged in all of his criminality. And so Trump got this idea, and I don't blame him, that he can act with impunity. So you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. If we're in a situation where we only have the House, for example, and obviously you can't pass legislation if you've only got the House, so that's fine. Use what power you have to at least begin investigating all of the rampant corruption that we're seeing right now, whether it's these Trump kids and Trump family members getting massive military contracts, whether it's these short sales that we're seeing on an almost daily basis where a bunch of stocks are sold and then 5 minutes later Trump makes an announcement that sends the stock market plunging or surging.
Yep.
So this stuff is happening in broad daylight, and I think there is this sense from Trump-aligned figures and Republicans that, you know what, like our guys are in office right now, we don't have to worry about any of this, but they should have to worry about that, because when you just kind of flout the rule of law in the way that they're doing right now, with this sense that nothing will ever happen, that's what gives rise to the lawlessness that we're seeing in government right now. And that's frankly why people give up on government when they see that there are two tiers of justice, which, by the way, is something that Republicans themselves ran against in 2024.
Do you are there potential 2028 Democratic contenders that you think would adopt this structural approach that you outline in the book?
I do. And the interesting thing about that is, first of all, I think that they have to. I don't think that there's going to be an appetite for what Joe Biden did in 2020, where he said, okay, what we're looking for is a return to normal. There is no more normal. Like that, not only is there no more normal, but frankly, a return to status quo politics is expressly what people have been voting against across the country. It is expressly what voters repudiated in 2024. And so the notion that we're going to run somebody who's going to usher in like a bygone era of compromise and bipartisanship and kumbaya, I think is really misguided. And I think whoever chooses that lane is going to find that out pretty quickly. But I think what's interesting is, even across ideological lines, I think that we're going to have candidates who run on this frame of, okay, we have to break the mold a little bit. I think, for example, if we see somebody like AOC run, and I hope she does, that she is not somebody who is constrained by the confines of establishment politics, obviously. On the flip side, even somebody who likens himself to or thinks of himself as an institutionalist like Gavin Newsom, I think that some of the lessons he learned from his own successful venture into redistricting, Prop 50, gave him the idea that, okay, this is the kind of stuff that voters are going to reward when you're not just doing more of the same, when you think outside the box and when you actually fight fire with fire. I think that is some positive reinforcement. So look, I think there's obviously an ideological difference between somebody like AOC and Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's more establishment. AOC is certainly more progressive. But even across those ideological lines, I think both of them understand that what is going to be successful moving forward is kind of breaking the mold a little bit and figuring out how to deliver on outcomes, as opposed to just allowing norms and procedures and processes and institutions and the parliamentarian and the filibuster to dictate how we operate.
Well, I think it is going to be a primary and an election, the likes of which we have never seen before. That is so. My likely prediction. The book, which I have here, is The Day After: How to Wield Power in a Post-Trump World. We've been speaking with Brian Tyler Cohen. You're still pre-ordering the book today, but it's out tomorrow. So it's sort of like you're just getting the book, I think is the right way to say it to people.
Yeah, and it's available everywhere. Also, if folks are looking to see me in person, I'm going to be on my book tour. So I'll be in Washington, D.C. on July 14th. I'll be in New York July 15th, and I'll be in L.A. July 18th. And you can find the link to order the book at a raft of different retailers, or grab book tour tickets at briantylercohen.com/book.
I'm buying up all the tickets myself, so people are competing with me for the. I want to make sure I control the entire.
Yes, that's right.
Congratulations on the book, Brian. Always good to talk to you, and we'll talk soon.
David, thanks for the work that you do, and thanks so much for having me on.